Hello everyone, welcome to Beskidy. Wonderful app here, Farming Simulator 13, always starting by grandfather, who kicks us in the hind end to get out and get working. The thing about getting working, as we know from past episodes, we've planted all of our fields. Maybe we just take a look here. 56, 67, 69, 51, and 50. They are currently growing, so to find something to do kind of in the intervening time, decided to cut a bunch of hay. And, you know, I maybe could point it out on here. I'm pretty sure I cut this one here. Yeah, I cut up here. Did a whole bunch of them. I think during the last episode, we were cutting kind of right behind our main shop area, if you will. Let me see. Can I find it? It's gotta be. I wonder if it's right here. I think we pretty well cut this. We then went over to here. Any free grass areas kind of in the surrounding vicinity to cut some hay and try to make some extra money. We're told kind of in the map documentation that crops grow at kind of a slower rate, so we need to find something to do to earn a little income. So that's kind of what we've been doing. Hopefully Grandpa heard all that and he's happy with progress. I fast forwarded time just slightly, actually here kind of where our tractor is still sitting in the field. You can kind of see a little where we did it. Where are we down here? Let me just pull up the map. Oh yeah, we're kind of down in the corner there, this L-shaped field. I did a bunch of it at night, so it's kind of early morning here now, and we'll need to do something with it. So I knocked a whole bunch of it down and didn't want to force anybody to watch it. But the trouble we had, that you may recall from last time, was our baler was literally vomiting bales. You know, we tried a little bit back here. I was testing some odds, if you will, kind of cut this or a portion of it. Then we tedded it. We used our baler here, and it just kicked out the bales like it just vomited bales. And so, oh, and this was our trailer somewhere here. Let me get to the right tractor. This is, I wish I would go away. Let me just step out of this here. We got it attached to our tractor here. And, you know, I don't even remember what this is called here. Down, down, down. Here it is. Agromet Z234. Tasmovka. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that right. But this is what it is. And, you know, first off, just looking at this, you know, this is the interesting thing about playing Farming Simulator. You know, I had a little farming background in my growing up years, but it all, you know, was a certain perspective, as it, you know, would be for any of us. And I gotta say, one neat thing, byproduct, if you will, of Farming Simulator and modding, is you get to see stuff like this. I never in my life have seen a rake and this one here, you can toggle it between raking and tedding. You can do both with it. I've never seen one in real life. Around here, you've used something different. The area where we're at, you don't see a lot of tedders. That the hay tends to just dry out on its own. We typically have enough sunshine to do that, so once you cut the hay, you let her drop, then you break it up and you bale it. So it's pretty rare that you see a tedder. I mean, they're not non-existent, but you don't see them at all, but they're designed differently than this one here, which, you know, the way the modder set it up, you could toggle between raking versus tedding. And we already kind of took a look at that, but I was just kind of looking at this. I've never heard of this particular style of rake or whatever. So I looked it up online. Let me just hop out of game here real quick. And this is another interesting thing. When you look up the agromet, first off, to learn how to pronounce some of these things, I got my handy dandy Google Translate, so appreciate that. I learned that this, was made in a factory over in Poland, and this was the name of the factory. I think it was a government-owned factory called this, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I'll let this dude do it for me.
Poznańska fabryka maszyn żniwnych, Agromet.
Agromet. Yeah, wow. All I know is English, so this has been a real challenge to try to pronounce these things properly. So that gentleman probably did a far better job than I could. But interesting, this is the name of the factory. I just found that on good old Wikipedia, government owned, and sure enough, I looked down through it, and one of the machines that they made there, let me see here, they describe it in here as swath spreaders. Yeah, I guess that's basically what a tedder would be. They don't specifically list the model on the particular page, and it's off screen that I'm looking at here. But anyway, I was hoping to find a little more history maybe on this particular brand, but I didn't. Well, and the other thing, when you type in Agromet Z234, look at this. I've noticed this time and time again, and maybe it's because my web browser knows that I have an interest in Farming Simulator, so that's what it feeds me. But look at all this. You are hard pressed when you look up a particular machine anymore to find something that is not in Farming Simulator. Here there happens to be a picture of a real life one. Maybe I can get it bigger. There we go. Here's, I guess, what they would look like in real life. I kind of think the one that we have in game is maybe an older model, perhaps. But I believe this is, kind of what we're looking at. But almost every other reference in here, these are all Farming Simulator pictures. Here, I recognize this picture. We just saw it in game. And it isn't just Farming Simulator 13, which is what we're in at the moment. Some of these, yeah, I'm not sure what well, that looks Farm Sim 13. This here, yeah, that's 19. Yeah, I can't really tell what that one is. But I think I've seen Farm Sim. Yeah, here's 11. So apparently this was a mod carried over from Farm Sim 11, and that may have had something to do with causing problems with the script, which we saw last time. Oh, here it is in Farm Sim 15. So all of these pictures, are coming in for Farming Simulator. I'm just trying to look for another. Aha, here we go. Here's a real life picture. Now this one is starting to look maybe a little more, like the one that we have. It's the same model, kind of more weather beaten, if you will. Oh, here's another one here, kind of from a different angle. But it's just it's interesting to. Oh, and you know what? Here's our baler. Look at that. I wasn't even going to talk about our baler. That looks exactly like our baler. So anyways, it's always been kind of amusing to me that when you look these up, trying to get a picture of them in real life, a lot of time what the Google or the search engine will populate the pictures with are all from Farming Simulator, which is just, I don't know, it just kind of makes me laugh. So, but anyway, this is kind of what it looks like in real life. So let me see, let me get the script up here. I want to look at this a little bit, and I'll show it in game. But here's the problem. Whenever you take a mod from one version to the next, and generally that always goes forward. I know there are some people that take them back versions, but generally, and I think that's what happened in this case, you have a script that works, say, and this is Farm Sim 13 that we're in. And we just saw evidence a little bit ago in the pictures that there was a version for Farm Sim 11. Well, so let's say somebody builds a script here, Farm Sim 11, and it works good in Farm Sim 11, and they bring it forward to Farm Sim 13, and they take it in game, and they say, okay, it looks like it's doing the job, it's tedding, it's doing what it's supposed to do, whoopee, and they figure they're done. But the problem is there are changes a lot of times in the scripts between the versions, and all I did, because we know it wasn't working, this is the version, that created tons of material that when we baled it, it just was lots and lots of bales. And so we know that wasn't right. But what I try to do when I fix it is ask myself, how do the giants set it up for their tedders or their windrowers? And in order to do that, we have to study their code. And it's getting kind of difficult to find the giants code anymore. And what I usually do if I need to find it, and maybe I'll try to put a link in the description. Let's make a note here to do that. Link to script docs. The Giants published this, years ago when Farm Sim 13 came out, and they had it at this ls-mods.de script documentation. So they had a whole bunch of their scripts there, and modders could look at these and, to make manipulations in the Lua code if they wished. Well, this website, I don't think it exists anymore, or if you try to type it in, it's going to take you to maybe the most recent version, farmingsimulator.com, that we're all familiar with. You can't hardly find this. So what I always do is I go to the web archive and I look at their internet archive, the Wayback Machine, and it'll take you back in time, and you can pick a particular point in time, as to when you want to look at this website, and it's very helpful. You can look at it during the era of Farm Sim 09, Farm Sim 11, which would have, Farm Sim 11, for example, would have come out, probably in the fall of 2010. So for scripts on 11, you look at the dates from late 2010 through late 2012, which is when things, would have switched over to 13, and so on. I think they have 13 and 15 scripts here as well. And then more recently, I think they still have 17 and 19 scripts and 22 over at the Giants Developer Network. And I won't put a reference to that here. I just wanted to tell people that these old scripts, you still can find them if you look at them through the web archive. But anyway, here is this is a capture of the Tedder Lua file. And it's from the add time era for 13. So we know that the script, if we are going to have a tedder, which we have over here in this script, that I'm trying to update here, we want to have it look somewhat consistent with how the Giants set it up. And right away, I noticed something that's a little bit different. They got, well, first off, we're trying to do multiple things over here. This has a toggle between a windrower and a tedder. So we know it's going to be fundamentally different from what we see over here. But where this over here is doing tedding activity, I wanted to mirror this over here for how the Giants do their tedding activity. Where it's doing windrowing activity over here, of course, I want it to mirror how the Giants do windrowing. So those are going to be some differences. But one thing I notice here is the mod author for this tedder windrower combo set all of this up in update. And update goes really, really fast. I think every single frame of the game, I think, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, But I think every single frame of the game, which is just happening constantly as we look at it on the screen, it always comes through update. So, the things you really want to have an update are things like key bindings, or the steering wheel. When you turn that wheel, or when you tell something to turn on, you want it to be, very responsive. So you want to make sure you catch it. So a lot of times you'll see input bindings, as you do here. You'll see them in update because you want to catch them really fast and have it be really responsive. But the game also has, and that's what we see here in, let me go back to it, also has something called update tick. And I'm not in the know, and I'm not astute enough to know how often an update tick is called. All I do know is it's called less frequently than update. So, and you'll see here, like in this one, here's the update. So in 13 they put the input binding in there, but then they put everything else in update tick, meaning it isn't calling all this as often as it's calling this up here. So the reason I mention that is we have it currently sitting in update, which means this is probably going to be pretty resource intensive. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit that when we take it in game, at least on my computer, it may flicker the screen just a little bit. So it may be something that we want to change, later to mirror kind of what the Giants did. Just put it all down and update tick, kind of separate it from the items up here that are input bindings. But once we get past that, we say, okay, Tedder, when you're gathering the areas to do it, well, first off, maybe, here's kind of the changes that I put in here. This is the old stuff. And there was a change, I think. I can't prove this. Maybe this is a change that happened in 11. No, it didn't happen in 11. Maybe it was in 09 that it did a little bit different. So what that tells me is this mod probably existed back in 09, but in 09 it was before the days of multiplayer. So a lot of times when you had like a Tedder script, it would do a whole lot more stuff in the script because you could get away with it. You didn't have to consider multiplayer aspects. Well, once you hit Farm Sim 11, you had to consider multiplayer. So a lot of times, that, like in the Tedder script in this case, you would gather the areas that needed updating, and then you would kick it over to another text that would help coordinate the multiplayer activity. So that's kind of what's going on here. In the old version, this was not only gathering the areas, which it did up here, then it started doing stuff with it that now is done in another script. So I don't know exactly what was causing, the so much tedded material to show up that, we got so many bales. But I suspect it had something to do with the accumulation of value of the material sitting on the ground. In the old days, Farm Sim 09, Farm Sim 11, I don't think they accumulated value of windrows sitting on the ground the same as they started doing in Farm Sim 13 and 15 later on. So in the old one, it probably just said throw down a windrow, and a windrow was a windrow was a windrow. Ditto with tedding, it all had the same value, probably was the maximum value. So I'm assuming that this over here, the way the existing script did it, put down the maximum value, hence we were having so many bales, that it was unrealistic. But over here, there's a few additional things that, were added. And like I say, I tried to copy, let me pull it back up here again, tried to copy how it was being done by the Giants. Now, one thing I didn't do is I didn't inject server stuff here. This, I don't know if there's any server stuff in here. Yeah, this is telling me all the more that this script had to have been written back in the Farm Sim 09 days before you had to consider the server. You know, this, where did that go? Oh, self is server. You know what that's telling it is do this, what's to come, only on the server computer, not the client. You know, when we log into someone else's game, they are the server and we are the client. And the server is like the permanent record, you know, where you want everything to happen. That's really where you want the grass to be picked up and tedded or whatever. And then once it's done on the server, that's where the multiplayer things kick in and they tell the client what to do. You know, if it happens the other way, like this over here, I don't think it would work in multiplayer without a little bit more work going into it. If you tell it to modify the client, you don't know if the master copy, if the server, if you will, is going to be updated. So you might see it on yours. You know, you might see the ground be modified, but your buddy playing on the server or on the other machine may not see it because it isn't syncing. So anyway, maybe people don't care about all that. I'm sure anybody that's had to wrangle with Lua code before would understand, you know, what I'm trying to say. Probably doing a very poor job at it, but suffice it to say, here's the changes that I brought in here. So we do have a switch here, is tedder active? You know, so if the tedder is on, then it's going to do this stuff up here. If the tedder is not on, that's the else, then it's going to do this stuff down here. So tedder stuff up here, rake stuff down here. If it's only tedder stuff, it's always going to bypass, you know, what's going on down here. So once again, I keep losing my page. You know what? I know what. Let me send this back. We don't need to see this anymore. Move to the other view. Okay. Now let me split my screen. There we go. So I believe, let's see, are we still in tedder? We are. So we're gathering the areas, and in these days, they were called cutting areas. And I know you're not cutting anything, you know, when you're tedding something or cultivating, windrowing, but they still called it a cutting area nonetheless. So you're gathering the areas, is tedder active, number of areas, there might be multiple areas on the tedder, you know, where there's a drop area, you kind of a cutting area where you pick it up, and a drop area where you set it down. So you go through all these areas, and it's got all these reference points that are points on the map for these areas. And this happens at blistering speed, you know, as we're moving equipment across the area. So you're gathering all these points for all the cutting areas. It's dropping them in a table, cutting areas send. Once you have all them things, you send it through the tedder area event. This is where the multiplayer syncing happens. And all we're doing here is gathering the areas. This is the workhorse, this run locally, that does all the stuff to the ground. It picks up the grass, it turns it a different color, it throws it back down, it accumulates how much that it is, and it gathers all this data using, you know, what we've handed it, and it sends it back here. And once you have this information, you know, this happens locally. Well, now that you've done it locally, you want to send it to, you want to broadcast it to everybody else. That's kind of what's going on here. So I am just copying what is going on over here, although I would observe in the giant script they have particle system stuff happening in here. I omitted that because this particular script has particle animation, it appears to me, handled through some other means, so I didn't bother messing with particle animation. I only, and you know, I wouldn't have had to throw this in. I just went ahead and did it. But as I reflect on it now, this script isn't, I don't believe, going to work, you know, with multiplayer, because I need to identify the server versus client in here, and I haven't done that. But I think for my purposes, playing with it on this map, I think it'll work okay. So anyway, I don't know if that made sense to everybody, gathering the areas, sending it off to do it, and you know what? I did the same thing down here for the windrower stuff, which is very similar. grabbing the areas. Oh, there's some other garbage in here. I don't know where this came from. But you're getting a cutting area, drop area. It's very similar, except you're not changing the character or the material. You're just raking it and putting it kind of in a row, if you will. So it's gathering those areas, you're putting it in tables, and then when we have them, now we have, and this is the Giants event. We didn't write that is windrow area event. You know, up here we had tedder area event. Here we got windrow area event, run locally. We're feeding it the areas and some other things that I won't bother going into. After it sends data back, we send it through, we broadcast event. Again, this is multiplayer syncing. So yeah, maybe I should put a little bit more work into it, but the point is I wanted, and I think the windrower one is over here. I wanted to try to mirror how the Giants did it. And you know, I gotta say, it took a lot of pain trying to get this all in here, make sure I had all the variables right. Well, first off, I was being an idiot and looking at the wrong scripts. You know, because I play various older versions, I was looking at Farm Sim 11 for a while, the wrong scripts, and then I finally got onto 13 and figured out, you know, like all the pieces in here that needed to be sent. You know, this self-accumulated cutting area values and accumulated fruit type. Like I say, you got to watch it at each version changes, so you need to know which version you're dealing with. And I, like I say, was not paying as much attention as I should, so it cost me a little bit more time to figure it out. But I think we'll find that it's working a little more the way we would expect it to. So I'm going to throw that down. Let's hop back in game, and there is our Z34. We'll hop into our tractor, and oh yeah, it's got the sign. Let me turn it on. Let me get our, here we go. Okay, oops, except I'm on the tractor. Turn on is B, and you can activate the tedder mode by hitting X. So I think I want to TED this. Let me first take a real quick look at the log. Okay, there isn't any, well, there's some performance measures in there, but yeah, I got real acquainted with the log file going through all of this. There's some other errors I've noticed in these mods, you know, that I'm working with, and maybe will need to be drummed out at some point. Let's give this a try, and all right, let me put it down. And you know, I think it's gonna look very similar to what we did before. Oh my word, that goes fast. You know, so it's just kicking the material over to the side, and it's lucky we happen to have an open spot, you know, which to kick all the material over. But when I get to the end, actually I'm gonna continue into the field. You notice, remember last time it continued with this windrow over here? We seem to have solved that, or at least I hope I have. You know, we kind of ended up over here. Oops. Let me lift this up. Yeah, I don't think it'll continue the windrow. Oh, that was some other blooper. Hopefully the messing around I did in here kind of fixed that as well. Alright, so we're going to come back the same way. I want to kind of accumulate it here, so let me go to windrower mode, hit key X, get this going, and let's hop on up the hill. Oh, that's still a pretty wide windrow. And its looks are deceiving. You know something? Oh, I see something else here I'm not exactly happy about, but maybe that's how they work. I am totally clipping the grass clear to the bottom. That's going to probably be affected, and why is this going so slow? Maybe I need to put it in too. And it's going to go too fast. I'm not sure why I slowed down. Huh. Well, we'll just get her done here. Okay, so we have just tedded and raked the grass. So let me leave that here. Let me just hop out real quick, and we'll kind of come take a look here. So it looks pretty normal, but I know you may remember this one over here is a thicker windrow. You know, I gotta say, this one looks thicker, but this one over here, trust me, is way thicker. This is the one we made before when, you know, we came through here, actually right here along this edge, that we got all those bales. But this, yeah, well, let's just hop in there and we'll see. Here's our baler. We'll just give this a look. All right, crank her up, Charlie. We'll come through here and patience, it's warming up. I think it's all set up. I was pleased that the save game file kept, yeah, there goes the bell. We are busy baling, so got our baler on. So I think it'll pick it up. Here we go. Now that looks a way lot better than what we had previously. And I'll show you in a moment here what we had previously. But this is way better in terms of what I would expect for these smaller bales. And hopefully you agree. And just to show you what I mean, I'll take one more trip down through here. And like I see, for the last time, we'll watch it just kind of vomit bales out of here. I don't know what it is about this over here, but it just can't spit them out quick enough. And I think it's because the windrow is so much thicker, you know, with values that we're not able to see with our eye. You know, but it must be something coded into it. You know, we're just getting a lot more bales. So, go figure. What I do notice is, yeah, see, that is very interesting. As I get back out here again, you see the strip kind of out in the middle that is denuded of grass. I don't know why that's there. You know, because I kind of think when you, yeah, I just don't know. It appears the rake also is scraping the field so hard that it's taking the grass off. So that's kind of interesting. I don't think the tedder does it, because I think when we put the tedder through, it left it kind of in this state here. So, but maybe that's, I'm using the giant scripts, so maybe that's just kind of by design. So anyway, hopefully it regrows. So I'm sorry that probably was a little more technical in nature, but I've just learned, you know, it seems a constant process if you're going to play Farming Simulator, that you're going to have mods that need to be fixed along the way. I wanted to try to do some real hay. I know in here you can bale the grass up, but I wanted to have another step in there. So now I know the tedder works. I see that it's a little bit more reasonable on the bale count. So we'll have a few more free bales here that we can sell, but hopefully now that means I can do some real work in here. So thank you so much for watching and coming along, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.